All right, welcome back to another video. We're discussing structural integration, what is structural integration, and a breakdown of each particular session. So in this video, we're going to be discussing session 2. So session 2 is all about working where we left off from session 1. Session 1 is typically kind of an introduction to the series. The main objective was opening the breath. Usually in that session, everything from the knee up kind of gets worked. In session 2, we're going to be working on the lower leg, kind of the area that didn't get touched. So the big impact here and the idea is to ground the body. So after the first session, maybe people feel kind of floaty. They're not there. There's like not as much balance or stability in the lower leg. So we're talking about knee down to the feet. And this session will really delve into those areas and we get pretty deep. One thing, at least historically from this session, is it can be very painful. A lot of people don't get a lot of work done. Typically when folks get regular massage or they go to say Bodywork, they'll typically work on the same areas. That's the low back, hip, upper back, neck. Those are the typical areas. If you're getting more kind of structural treatment work, those are the areas that get worked on the most. The legs very often don't. Some people don't like being touched on the feet. Some people have really painful areas in the calf and they don't like getting pressure there. But again, the whole idea of this series is working through the whole body to get all these synergistic pieces, this kind of view of tensegrity, that everything's kind of connected. And so especially if we're dealing with someone who has like chronic back pain, especially in the hips are generally connected to the knees and the ankles. So typically if there's an issue going on with the hip, there's going to be something going on with the knee and the ankle, and I've seen that time and time again. Maybe there's an injury in the ankle and it kind of progresses, causes an imbalance, causes somebody to compensate with something else and will function there. So in this session, we're really trying to delve into the deeper aspects of the lower leg, and the joints in question for me when I'm working are getting into the knee joint, the ankle joint, and the toes, kind of the deeper areas of especially the big toe. So from this functional range perspective, the big toe is a very important piece. Having the proper dorsiflexion, plantar flexion in the big toe, the flexibility, the mobility there will affect how somebody's walking and running. If you're playing sports, especially for me, especially like something like jiu-jitsu, where say the position like turtle where I'm on all fours, I need to be able to have flexibility in my foot to explode, to come forward, to push, to have a strength there. If I don't have flexibility, there's going to be a much weaker position to kind of launch from. So looking at the foot, very important. Traveling up, making sure there's enough space, range of motion in the ankle. A lot of people focus on this flexion, dorsiflexion, but we're also looking at the rotational aspect of the foot. Do I have enough rotation in my ankle, this inversion, eversion, to allow for the certain space for my foot to dorsiflex and flex? Sometimes, typically, some people will stretch a lot. They'll stretch their calves, but it never seems to get any better. And one of the aspects from this functional range perspective is, does the ankle have enough workspace? Is it able to rotate? Is it able to invert and evert enough to allow your ankle bones to get past, get dorsiflex, and dorsiflex, plantar flex, like point up, point down? If that isn't there, it's gonna like hit a wall. There's gonna be a physical wall that it's not gonna be able to pass, and people can stretch all day, but if you don't have that workspace to move in there, it doesn't matter how much you stretch. So that's typically an aspect, working on those deeper flexors of the foot. So those 3 layers of calf muscle. We have your gastroc, your soleus, going deep in the tib posterior. So those are controlling the toe flexors. A lot of times people will see you'll see like the curling of the toes, and that is typically reminiscent of like deep tension in the foot. So looking at that, and of course continuing up into the knee. So making sure, just like we were talking about this ankle, not only do I have flexion extension, but can my tibia, my bottom foot bone or leg bone, can that rotate? Does it have an ability to rotate? Typically you'll see this with people who have injuries with knees. So any old injury, LCL, MCL, tendons, meniscus, sometimes there'll be a lack of an ability to rotate in the lower leg, and that can lead to further issues. So from a treatment perspective, I'm looking at all these areas. And again, like I said, sometimes this can be one of the more painful sessions. Typically, mostly because not only do you use these muscles all the time, but they don't typically work on as much as other muscles. So it can be very tender, depending on who you're seeing. Again, I go to where I'm feeling in the tissue. You only go as much as you do, but in past experience, this has been one of the more tender areas. So just knowing that whoever you're working with, making sure you're in contact with them, and that if they have to pull back, there's other things that can be done. But what will tend to happen, this will be like the first attempt, and if you continue in the series, this area will be worked on multiple times. So we're going to go back to it again and again, and there should be some change in there. Another area that I kind of glossed over real quick was like this plantar fascia area. So sometimes people start getting the pain in their foot, this plantar fasciitis kind of issues, and that again can be caused by many different reasons. Typically for me, I'm seeing a lot of tension in these calf muscles. So people who are unable to dorsiflex, plantar flex, where just standing in a 90-degree flexion on the ground will be a stretch. They can't even go any further. So that puts a lot of tension on this Achilles tendon, which continues down into the lower aspect of the foot. So we're working on all those areas. So this is a very important place to start. We start from the feet now. This was usually the original first session. But we started with the breath, so now we're working our way from the ground up the body. And the first thing we got to do is get a good foundation, get some good base, and work on the structures here. So impacting that. So one other aspect I want to add to this is the idea of what we're working on. So visually you can kind of see we're working this whole section from the knee down and all the structures that are involved. And typically I want to be able to rotate this ankle, this foot, and that's what we're talking about, inversion, eversion, and those are going to be connected to these muscles in the front of the shin, and also an area that most people have never really got worked. So that typically can be very painful, and there's a bunch of different muscles here, and we're also working on these big toe muscles. That's kind of the last part of this tibial muscles that run through this line, and then transferring onto the back. So first layer, the gastroc, second layer, the soleus, then the deep layers, which again will control like the foot. You can see in this picture he's actually kind of tight, probably a little bit. There's some tension where the toes start to curl. So, and then looking into the bottom, so if these muscles are tight, this will continue to cause tension through the bottom of the foot and having some plantar fasciitis. Typically it'll either be closer to the toes, but I tend to see a lot like right at the edge here, this tendinous part where it starts to it integrates from like muscle belly into tendon, and there's a lot of tension that gets wrapped up right around there. And so a lot of areas to work, very sensitive. As you can see, these muscles are always in use, and also working into the knee, so the back of the knee, any knee pain, some areas to work in there too. So looking into the popliteus and all these muscles that rotate the knee. You can look on the bone side. So as I was saying, if I'm unable to rotate, this cannot fully go any further. It kind of hits a stopping point. These bones are kind of offset, and if it's tight, if there's no space in the inversion eversion, they get really tight, so you literally hit like a wall. So these bottom bones can't fully flex any further. So a lot of aspects working, trying to get some space in the foot and then in the knee too. So can this tibia rotate side to side? Because that will also allow me to flexion, extend, bend the knee, and extend the knee. So a bunch of different things to look at, and session 2 is very important. Getting a good base, getting a good grounding as we continue to work through the whole body.